everyone. It's 5 p.m. on the clock, which means it's time to kickstart ET Now's Rise with India Prime Time Hour. I'm Mubina Kapasi, and as always, we will do so with your one-stop shop for all your money matters, and that is the Money Show. Today on the show, here's what we have lined up. Credit risk mutual funds. What are they? They were battered out of shape in August because of the entire NBFC crisis. But did you know you could invest in them? But what are they and should you invest in them? That's what we will be discussing. Also, the word on the street is that your insurance premium will now depend on what kind of a driver you are. The more rashly you drive, the higher your premium will be. Of course, it's still in initial stages, but we are going to get a brief gist of how your premiums will be altered because of these new rules. A quick glance into those rules right here on the Money Show. And finally, of course, on our Spend with TMS segment, the iPhone 11, the iPhone 11 Pro and the Pro Max and the new iPads and the Apple Watches are all here. The question is, should you be spending your money on them? We are going to get you a review of the Apple products. All of this lined up on this edition of TMS. But first, a quick look at the headlines. The winning ways are back on the Lal Street as benchmark indices end higher for the fifth day in a row. Nifty ends above 11,000, Sensex closes 135 points higher. Realty and PSU banks emerge as the top performers. Meanwhile, a word of caution coming in from big global voice Raul Pal. He expects the US economy to slip into a recession but remains a long-term bull on India. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's comments on millennial mindset leading to the auto slump have been taken out of context, says Roads Minister Nitin Gadkari, adds that the Finance Minister cited the switch to Ola and Uber as one of the many reasons. Also explains that the demand fluctuations amid improvement in public transport is also a natural phenomenon. The government could identify candidates for strategic divestment by the end of this month, and banks are unlikely to be a part of this list. Sources say there will not be another ETF this year, barring the Bharat 22 tranche. That's an ET Now exclusive. A default notice has been served to Rana Kapoor. Sources say that Reliance Mutual Fund has sent a notice to the Yes Bank founder for failing to top up collateral shortfall. The mutual fund has estimated a mandatory top-up of around 500 crore rupees from Rana Kapoor. Sanjeev Bikhchandani breaks his silence on Operation Logout. Zomato's largest investor with a 33% stake says issues with NRAI will be fixed in 1 or 2 weeks. Speaking exclusively to ET Now, he expresses confidence of Zomato being on track to break even in the next few months. Political rivalry brings Andhra Pradesh to the brink. Former Chief Minister and TDP Chief Chandrababu Naidu and his son have been put under house arrest to prevent them from participating in a protest against the YSR government. Naidu calls the move atrocious and a violation of human rights. Well, those were the big headlines we are tracking for you. But this evening on The Money Show, we are talking about credit risk mutual funds in our very first segment. As the name suggests, it is a mutual fund, but it's a very different kind, and we are going to be discussing what exactly is it. As the name again suggests, it has to do with credit default events. In fact, in terms of recent news flow, the month of August did seem a lot of pain point coming in for credit risk mutual funds as investors press the exit button out of these funds. What's the risk factor? What's the time horizon you should have? Is it a great wealth creation tool? Is all we will be discussing today on the show. And of course, we will be answering all your personal finance questions and queries as well. But to take us through all of this, I have with me Brijesh Dalmia of Dalmia Advisory, from Kolkata. Brijesh, thank you for joining us on the Money Show. It's a pleasure having you with us. Let's start off first with the basic concept, and that's credit risk mutual fund. I think it's something that retail investors don't usually invest in. I mean, our favorite go-to product is a large cap fund or a multi-cap fund or a small and mid-cap. But what are credit risk funds, and is it something that all our individual investors and viewers out there could look for as an instrument for investing in?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Well, as the name suggests, credit risk fund, they have some element of risk in this. In India, investments in government securities are considered to be the safest, and anything other than government securities, there is some element of risk. For example, if you invest in a bank FD, you get around 6.75% to 7%, but in government securities, you get around 6.5%. The difference is nothing but the small amount of additional risk that you are taking. Similarly, when you invest in a corporate, in a limited company, the risk is a little higher, and probably you can get 7% or 7.5%. In some companies, you can get 9% and 10%, and it maybe 11, maybe even 12%. The additional return that an investor gets is nothing else than the risk he's taking to invest in that security. As the name suggests, credit risk fund, when you invest through a mutual fund, you allow mutual funds to invest your money in a little higher risky instruments where there could be some kind of default for which you get additional return. It doesn't necessarily mean that your money will get defaulted, because the underlying investments are made into more than 50, 100 or 200 companies. But yes, there is some element of risk in credit mutual funds.
So would you say, Brijesh, then that these funds, because they invest in these, highly risky securities, etc., would you say that the risk element is higher, but at the same time, maybe the return as well is higher compared to other mutual funds?
Oh, yes. For example, if you invest in government securities through mutual funds, your return could be in the range of 6.5%. But if you invest in credit risk fund, your return could be in the range of, as per the current YTMs of these schemes are on net yield basis, you can get around 8 to 9% depending on various mutual funds. So investors tend to take additional risk of their investment to get these 2%, 3% extra return on an annual basis. So so they're compensated for the additional risk they're taking through the credit mutual funds, credit risk mutual funds.
All right. So Brijesh, if this fund has to make money, it would make money if, say, the underlying security in which the fund invests in, let's say some commercial papers or some debt instrument, if it is upgraded by the rating agency, would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what about, since it is in of course, your, in debt instruments, will there be an interest component as well that could be passed on to, the mutual fund investor?
Oh, yes. For example, if the interest rates goes up or go down, the credit risk mutual funds are affected positively and negatively. For example, if the duration of the underlying security is high and interest rates go down, then investors are benefited, and vice versa. For example, if interest rates go up in the short term, then returns are poor in credit mutual funds simply because they invest generally for 2 to 3 years investment horizon, and their money is locked in for 2 to 3 years, not for the investor, but from the underlying security from the mutual fund manager's perspective. And if interest rates goes up, they lose out. So there is an element of interest rate risk in credit risk mutual fund, yes.
Okay. You mentioned time horizon, and that was going to be my next question. Usually when we talk about mutual fund investing, we usually say invest for the long haul, for wealth creation, etc. Would that be the same funda for credit risk funds as well, or it should be treated like a debt fund, and maybe for like a short term or a medium term is where you should park your money for credit risk funds?
So credit risk mutual fund are part of a debt mutual fund, and there are different kind of time horizons for different funds. For example, if you are looking to invest in a credit risk mutual fund, your time horizon cannot be less than 2 years or 3 years or maybe even more. Simply because they invest typically in instruments which have a maturity of 2 to 3 years and even 4 years. And because of the interest rate risk, it makes sense for you to stay longer. If you want to invest for shorter duration funds, credit risk funds are not for you. For example, if you're looking for 6 months or 1 year, I would suggest you to stay away from credit risk mutual funds.
Now, Brijesh, let's talk about the current scenario. I mean, in the last 1 year, we have seen ILNFS. In the last 1 year, we have seen defaults by DHFL, by Yes Bank, by SL Group. I mean, there have been a lot of companies, and some of them you can't even believe that they would have defaulted. But the fact is there have been defaults. How have credit risk mutual funds performed then in such a scenario when we are seeing defaults?
Well, you see, these are extraordinary situations we have not witnessed in the last 20, 25 years in Indian mutual fund history. There have been a few instances of default, and that has given some pain to investors in mutual funds, and especially in the area of credit risk mutual funds. But if you really see in the last 1 year, there has not been many cases. There have been instances of ILFS, a little bit of GE and DHFL, but I think it will pan out in the next 3 to 6 months how exactly things are in the NBFC space as well as the real estate industry. Uh, uh, I think investors do not need to worry a lot about this because mutual fund companies are able to manage their funds pretty well. Of course, there are some specific mutual funds and there are specific schemes which have given a lot of pain to the investor and they have lost out a good amount of money. But most of the top rated mutual funds and their schemes are showing good strength. And when you have to invest and select a credit risk mutual fund, you must.
Oops, I think we just snapped that Skype connection with Brijesh. But just to sort of summarize what exactly Brijesh was saying about credit risk mutual funds, essentially they are debt funds. They invest in those securities that have a rating of lower than AA, negative rated paper. So by investing in these high credit risk funds, they essentially are able to generate higher returns as well. But mind you, they are a bit risky. Okay, we've been able to reconnect with Brijesh, and on this note, let me just invite all our viewers once again that you can send in your questions and queries on your mutual fund portfolio or any personal finance question or query that you may be having, and Brijesh will answer them. 24990388, or you can email us on themoneyshow@etnow.tv. Brijesh, please continue with your point, what you were making about how what we are facing right now is sort of a debut of a situation in the last 15, 20 years of mutual fund history.
Investors need to believe in the capability of mutual fund companies. Their investment is diversified heavily. In some of the funds, their investment of 10,000 or 1 lakh or 5 lakh is distributed to more than 100 and 200 underlying companies. So the risk is there, but the component of risk is not very high. So as an investor, you need to see the underlying security that whether your fund is invested in companies which are single A or double A rated, whether you like those scripts or not, whether the single exposure in these companies are to the extent of 2% or 4%, or it is 10% or 15%. The higher the exposure, you should probably avoid those mutual fund schemes because the risk goes high. So you need to select schemes where there's a very good amount of diversification across sector, across companies, so that your money is distributed to a large number of companies, which necessarily reduces your risk. So yeah, you should probably go slow in credit risk mutual fund at this point of time. Maybe shorter duration funds will be more applicable. But on a selective basis, you can invest in credit risk fund because now the yields are very good in this space because of whatever has happened in the last 12 months. Risks are there, but it's not a panic situation at all.
So folks, that's I think sum and substance of what credit risk mutual funds are, and Brajesh's advice as well on them. But like I said, we're going to be answering questions and queries. Quickly call in. We have a short window where we'll kickstart Ask the Money Show. Well, first up, let me take the email queries of the day, and we have Cedric Sequeira who has sent in an email. He says, I'm 50 years old and would like to know if mutual fund direct investing or NPS tier 2 is cheaper on all fronts. He also wants the names of the funds that he could invest in for a period of 5 years. And for 10 years, this is essentially SIPs that he wants to start off with. I think he's saying that 5 years and 10 years, that's roughly his time horizon. Also, he believes that 3 large caps, 2 mid caps, 1 passive fund is what he would like to invest in. So Brijesh, let's talk about the 2 products. One is a regular mutual fund, the other is an NPS tier 2. Also the composition, 3 large caps, 2 mid caps and 2 passive funds. Is this a good portfolio to have? And do consider he is 50 years old. He may be retiring in the next 15 odd years. So what do you think of his, what would you advise him to do from here on?
All right. So first of all, NPS cannot be compared to mutual funds because in NPS there are the funds are locked in up to 60 years, and the withdrawals are taxable in case of tier 2 as per your income tax bracket. Whereas when you invest in a mutual fund, your income are taxed at the lower rate because of capital gains tax. Secondly, Cost, of course, is lower in direct mutual fund. It depends if the investor is capable to handle his own portfolio. He can invest directly. But I would suggest that he must take into account all the factors before he picks a scheme. As far as the cost is concerned from NPS is the cheapest possible structure in the country today, which gives you fund management by top companies like SDFCs of the world and ICICIs of the world at a very reasonable cost. This is because it's a large bucket and the cost really comes down. So from the cost angle, nothing beats NPS. Having said that, one should not invest a lot of money in NPS too, simply because of the cost structure, because the tax benefit is not as high as mutual funds, along with the liquidity option. Coming to the second part of the question, at age 50, of course, I think the selection, I will go with him in terms of the large cap schemes as well as the two mid caps and ETS fund. He may not need to invest in 7 funds. Maybe 2 or 3 funds is good enough for him. One large cap, one mid cap, and one ETF should be sufficing for him. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I hope, Cedric, we've been able to answer your questions. Please do keep writing in to us. Okay, let's take the next query. It's coming in from S. Gupta. Mr. Gupta writes to us, I would like to start an SIP in a small cap fund for the long term. But he wants to choose between 2 funds, HDFC small cap or the SBI small cap mutual fund. Unfortunately, he's not given us any of his parameters, like for example, how old he is, what's the amount, does he have any other investment, or is it just this small cap investment that he wants to start off with. But on a prima facie basis, and Brijesh, for the benefit of all our other viewers who may want to invest in a small cap fund, they may be having their large caps and their multi caps or their passive funds in place, but they don't have a small cap. What would you recommend in terms of a small cap fund? Which AMC, HDFC or SBI?
Data of the client, and I'm not in touch with the client directly, so it's very difficult. But both these fund houses are the top fund houses, and both these schemes, HDFC small cap as well as SBI small cap, are doing very well. So I would suggest he can split his SIPs in both these schemes, and he should be good. One thing he should keep in mind is that small caps are very, very volatile, and if he's investing in small caps, his investment horizon should be pretty long term, maybe 7 years, maybe 10 years, maybe even more. We should not invest in small cap for 2 years or 3 years or even 5 years. We have seen that historically, even 5-year SIPs in small cap can go negative.
All right. So I think I think mostly Brijesh seems to be pretty agnostic between the 2 fund houses. And frankly, most funds do tend to have similar stocks that they invest in, and hence we talk about over diversification as well in mutual funds. This is a very important point. There's no point of having like an entire pool of more than 10 mutual funds, because then after a point it essentially becomes like you're overlapping in terms of stocks. So it's very important to ensure that you don't have too many stocks, because mutual fund itself is a diversified product. You don't want to over diversify in an already diversified product. That's very important to note. Having said that, of course, between SBI and HDFC, I think Brijesh seems to be pretty A-okay between either of the funds. That's very important. Okay, let's take our next question. Prasanta Kumar Mondal has written into us saying that he is salaried. He has a salary of around 62,000 rupees, and he has 6 mutual funds: HDFC mid cap, HDFC small cap, the Mirae Asset Emerging Blue Chip Mirae Asset Tax Saver, Kotak Standard Multi Cap, Parag Parikh Long Term Multi Cap. So 2 blue chip funds, 2 small cap, 1 mid cap and 1 small cap fund, and I think 2 multi cap funds. Oh, he also has one more, the SBI Magnum Equity Fund. His goal is too many zeros out there, but I think roughly it is around 1 crore rupees, and he is going to retire by 2035. That's roughly around 15 odd years from now. So Brijesh, how would you look at the composition of his portfolio? Any chops or changes that you'd recommend?
With 8,000 rupees of SIP, probably he will not be able to achieve his target of 1 crore in the desired period of time. He probably has to invest more. Another thing which needs to be taken care of is that he is trying to invest 100% in equity funds and want to achieve his target. So as his target goal comes near, he needs to shift his money to debt funds where returns will be lower. Because if he keeps investing in equity funds and in the year of his withdrawal or near his retirement, the markets are not doing well, he will be in for a surprise. So he needs to probably even look at some debt funds over a long period of time to give him the safety of the portfolio. As an asset allocation means currently he is exposed 100% into equity funds. Even if he wants to take higher risk, probably after 5 years or 8 years or maybe 10 years, he needs to shift part of his money into debt portfolio to be a little safer. In terms of the selection of the schemes, I find his selection is pretty okay. There's nothing much to change. Just that he is just into too many funds again, maybe 8 funds. Maybe he needs to cut down a few of them. Yeah.
What do you think of the timing? All right. Okay. Well, on that note, we'll have to shut shop on Ask the Money Show. We won't be able to take any more calls, but you're free to write into us, and we will ensure we take forward your question in tomorrow's episode of the Money Show. Brijesh, thank you for joining us and patiently answering all the questions and queries from our viewers. We will wrap it up on the first segment of the Money Show, but when we return, we are going to be talking about insurance premiums on your cars, and it's going to depend on how safe a driver you are. Preliminary rules yet, but it may turn into reality very soon. Welcome back. You're watching The Money Show on ET Now. Here's an interesting tidbit. Did you know that very soon the way you drive will actually determine what your average monthly expense will be? That's right. I'm talking about your motor insurance premium. On a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, on a biannual basis, you may be shelling out a certain amount for the premium or for the safety of your car. But now it looks like the insurance regulatory wants to determine how much premium you will pay based on your historic traffic violation. So if you've broken a signal, if you've rash driven at any point of time, if you have driven under influence of alcohol, you will have to shell out more for your insurance premium. We are looking at traffic rules linked car premium, and that's expected to be the case very, very soon. This picture right here could as well lead to you paying more for your premium. So let's bring on board now Sajja Chaudhary, the motor insurance head of PolicyBazaar.com. Hi Sajja,
Hi.
Thanks so much for joining us on
Thanks
ET Now. And you know, rash driving is something very, very common in
Absolutely.
Mumbai, in India. I mean, these images say it all, right? See
Yeah.
people driving on the other side of the road. Incidentally, there's a police officer himself who's driving on the other side of the road. But it's a very, very common phenomena. And I suppose maybe it could be said in a bid to sort of plug this problem, the RDI has come out with a very unique rule. So if you could just sort of, and it's initial, of course, folks, do remember, it's still not confirmed, it's still initial. We will be, of course, in touch with Sajja once again once the rules are final. But yeah, what exactly are we looking at now?
So basically, you know, IRDA has constituted a working panel who would understand how this works in the international, in other countries, and then figure out how to put this point system in place across states, because, you know, we're a large country with many states who work it differently, right? So to put in place different point system for each and every offense, and then figure out how the data comes into one system, and then how to share this data with insurers or anyone, and then how do you actually link this points to back to insurance premium? How is it going to affect? Is it going to increase? It's going to decrease? What kind of offense will be considered to be a minor? What kind of offense will be considered to be a major one? So that's, and they're supposed to come out with the initial recommendations within 8 weeks. Probably post that will be up for a public draft, and then finally it becomes a rule kind of.
So are we looking at even our past violations? I mean, since of course it's a long way until these rules are finally implemented, but basically what kind of back data are we looking at?
It completely depends on, you know, what the final rules will come out as. But having said that, if the data is available, then why not use it? It's not that, you know, you would not have done it, or you would not do it once the rule comes in place, right? It's just that we're trying to curtail bad behavior, and we're trying to, you know, basically incentivize the good behavior over there on roads. And obviously, if you have some data, well, it's better to use that as well.
So right now, what are the insurance premiums on my automobile based on? What are the factors?
Okay, so today most of the insurers generally base your auto insurance premium basis your vehicle type, which is basically what kind of vehicle that you have.
An SUV or a sedan
basically
or whatever.
a vehicle, which is basically, you call it a model, and then there are certain things like fuel, because there are certain patterns that you see between a diesel vehicle and a petrol vehicle, and obviously whether you claimed last year or not, in the previous year or not, which determines your no claim bonus, and then the RTO from which your vehicle or the city in which you reside, because those also somewhere correlate to the loss ratios that the insurers see over a period of time. Predominantly, these are the factors that they consider while pricing a product today.
So, because I think all of us here, and I'm saying almost all of us here, have had some or the other traffic violation. I mean, if you pull up my record,
Absolutely.
I'm sure that there are some sort
Absolutely,
of traffic
yes.
violations.
Yes.
So that means, can we assume that on an average, everyone's premiums could go up a little
No,
bit?
it doesn't work out like that, right? You have to look at everything to be as a percentile kind of a thing.
Okay.
So let's assume you can say that most of us have, but not that everyone has it.
Yeah.
And they can be minor, and they can be something might be major, right?
Major, yeah.
Minor might be by mistake you've taken a wrong turn because you didn't see that signal or whatever. These are very, very minor in nature.
Or entering a no entry or something.
Yeah, entering into no entry lane. But the major one can be driving under influence of alcohol, which if you consider in a country like US, right, it can drive up your premium as much as about 180%, which means if you are paying 100 rupees earlier, you might end up paying 280 rupees the next year.
Yeah.
So there's minor and major. So everything will be basis that. So it need not be that everyone would be charged higher. So always it will be on a percentage basis or a percentile basis to constitute who is the good driver, who's the bad driver kind of.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, I think once it gets implemented, even those who are having these minor incidents also will reduce.
Okay, all right. So, on an average, I mean, is it like if we are, from some reports that I've read, we are trying to adopt the US model or the European model. This is roughly what I have read. And I know for a fact that in the US, you're paying really high premiums. So, how far are we trying to sort of inspire ourselves from the US model?
No, so it's obviously it will be the Western countries like US and UK would inspire to an extent because they've evolved over this system over a period of time, right? So we might borrow some of those from those countries, but because India is a very different country with so many states and different kind of roads and different kind of traffic conditions. Like for example, in US, a traffic rule says that there are rules to enter into a road and who will enter first, who will enter later on. While in India, it might not matter. So we might borrow certain things, but it might not be exactly the same.
Okay, that brings me actually to another point. You mentioned different states. Now, just today, we interestingly had Gujarat and Tamil Nadu saying that, hey, listen, we are not going to charge our drivers such high and ostentatious fines, if you could call it that, which is pinching a lot of pockets already. Does the same apply for insurance premiums as well? Does the law work that way or it's different?
It depends on the insurance company, right? So the insurance premium is decided by the insurance company, and that predominantly is guided by either the Indian Motor Vehicle Act or the Indian Motor Tariff, or what the IRD comes out with from time to time in terms of rules. So I don't see that such a state subject or a state coming into play in this scenario. Unlike the traffic violation or the traffic fines that we're looking today.
But when are we looking at these things being implemented? While of course that's not to say that you should start driving well only after that certain date. I think since you're saying that backdated history as well, but by when are we looking?
So basically I think the panel is going to take about 8 weeks, which is 2 months to submit the report, and then the final, generally if you go by history, probably under a couple of months to finally to come out with draft, and then a month to roll out. Probably 2020, somewhere around April is what a realistic timeline might be, but they're looking at Delhi NCR to start with. So let's see.
So it'll be in phases.
It will be in phases. This is going to be pilot in Delhi NCR to look at what are the kind of issues that we're facing, what's the kind of feedback that's coming back, or then to also look at insurers and if the data is flowing in right, wrong, and everything else.
Okay, well that's the case really, and I think the fact is that in cities like Mumbai, where there's so much population density, you can't avoid but drive how you drive. I think everyone's going to opt more for Olas and Ubers because they don't want the headache of driving, essentially. I think that's
absolutely. Yes.
Okay, all right. Also, another question that I wanted to ask you essentially is that how would there be any changes that we could expect when we actually want to go and claim our amount, our insurance amount or a compensation amount from the insurance company, or that remains the same?
No, I don't think this will have an impact on when you claim, unless yes, if yes, that's a very relevant question. There'll be very less scenarios where you would be going for a claim and you also found to be the person who's not following the rules at that point of time, right? let's assume you're found to be driving under the influence of alcohol, and you go for a claim tomorrow morning. The insurer sees that there's a ticket and they can deny a claim, which might not happen today in a realistic scenario, because not that this data is available digitally, and there are a lot of other things that can happen. Yes, that might change, but otherwise the rest of the process is broadly expected to remain same.
Okay, all right. So if you are found, responsible for the reason why your car is examined, there could be a chance.
There could be a reason. For example, let's assume there's a ticket that's issued yesterday night saying you were speaking on mobile while this accident happened, and you want to claim. God save you.
Okay, all right. So maybe longer litigation processes as well? Because see, there is a scenario, like you said, it's almost like a mathematical model, right? Percentiles, etc. that will work in major, minor offenses, etc. So is there going to be a situation where I may disagree that, I don't think I should be paying such a premium?
I don't think so, because, there are multiple insurance companies. So it's like today also they can decide on whatever way they would want to charge, right? So you have a disagreement, but it's up to you whether you want to go ahead and buy it. Anyways, you have a third party premium, which is the basic policy, which is anyways mandated to run on the road. That anyways is controlled by IRDA. The price is controlled by IRDA. So that's same across users. So that will not change. So it's just that the own damage component is going to change, and I don't think there's much to do there.
What about existing policies? Like, let's suppose I've just bought my car, and in the next 2-3 odd months I've just got my new insurance policy for my new car, etc. So what's going to happen?
So it's nothing would impact on that insurance policy right now. But when it comes up for renewal, probably by then, if that law is implemented in the place where this car is, yes, it might impact your insurance premium. Yes.
Okay. All right. On that note, Saja, thank you so much for joining us and giving our viewers a brief insight into what these new rules look like. Folks, moral of the story is drive carefully or you will be shelling out more from your premiums. And I think regardless of that, you should be driving safely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Saja, for that. Well, that, of course, is all about the new insurance premium rules that could be kicking in soon, maybe in the next 7 to 8 odd months. April 2020, realistically speaking, is the kind of deadline we are staring at. So, folks, fasten your seat belt and of course drive safe. But we were speaking about the new Motor Vehicles Act and the hefty premiums it's brought along with itself, and there's been a lot of hoo-ha around it. So once again, let me remind our viewers, if you need another incentive to drive safe, it'll come up for you on your screens in just a bit, and that is the hefty violation fines that you will have to pay. And believe me, they are very, very significant. There have been new rules as well added which were not there previously. One, driving without a license. It's jumped, and how, to a whopping 5,000 rupees. This is driving without a license. Overspeeding is anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 rupees. And then you also do have first-time offences and second-time offences. For example, rash driving or dangerous driving. If this is the first time you have been caught rash driving, you could be imprisoned from 6 months to 1 year, and there's a 1,000 to 5,000 rupee fine. But if this is the second time you've been caught rash driving, then you will be jailed for up to 2 years, and the fine inflates to 10,000 rupees. Talking about drinking under the influence, which is a major and a very, very severe violation. Again, if this is a first time offense, you will be imprisoned from 6 months to 1 year, and there could be a fine of 10,000 rupees. But if this is your second offense, then again, the imprisonment duration increases to 2 years, and the fine as well jumps to 15,000 rupees. Overspeeding, like I told you, it's between 1,000 to 2,000 rupees. But that's not all. We have a couple of other rules as well that have been including, and that is overloading the car, keeping more passengers than you're allowed to in your car. For example, if it's a sedan, ordinarily you will have in total 5 passengers, including the driver. But if you try to overload your vehicle, there will be a fine. If you've not worn a seat belt, there will be a fine. So you've got to be very, very careful. Ensure you obey all the rules. Also, if you're driving on the wrong side of the road, I'm sorry and unfortunate to look at this sorry state of affairs of roads, but we do see in an increasing manner the number of people driving on the opposite side of the roads, and rightly so, they too will be fined. So folks, beware. Yes, they look like inflated numbers, but as opposed to disciplined people, this could be one method that could be used. However, if you live in Gujarat and Tamil Nadu, the governments over there have decided to curtail the fine. Gujarat, in fact, has said that they are going to reduce the quantum of fines by 25 to 90%. And Tamil Nadu as well has said that they do not want to adopt the new Motor Vehicles Act in its totality. Interestingly, Gujarat is actually that one state that has a huge number of traffic violations. So I'm pretty surprised that the Gujarat government would want to take up something like this. Let's hope that this would encourage all of our viewers out there to drive safe, if not for the sake of your money, but at least for the sake of your family back home. These are some of the fines that essentially are charged now. Okay, we'll do one thing. We will take a quick break right here on The Money Show. But when we come back on our Spend with TMS segment, we will be taking a look at the whole host of Apple products and if they indeed are worth your money. Three cameras at the back, starting 65,000. Don't miss the snazzy colors. iPad at a lower price. Apple's iWatch. All of this is what was unveiled by Apple at Cupertino in their usual September announcements. Welcome back, everyone. You're watching The Money Show on ET Now, and this is our Spend with TMS segment where we tell you what products out there are actually worth your money. So yes, Apple has unveiled its treasure chest for all those gadget freaks out there, for all those long-time ardent Apple devotees and loyals out there. But the question is it actually worth your buy, or should you try to pull your previous Apple product for one more year? That's what we will be discussing today. But before that, let's just get a quick snapshot of all the products that Apple has released. Rahul Dayama is with us right now. Hi, Rahul.
Well, all the speculations, rumors have now come to an end with the launch behind us. The big highlight really was the new iPhone 11 series that does not seem to disappoint both on the price front as far as features. The pricing really starts at about 64,900 rupees for the initial variant, goes up to about a lakh, tad cheaper, at least the variant from the iPhone X, so to say. Triple camera sensors for much better photo, video really, and a Face ID for greater angles as well. But apart from that, a host of other products have been announced. A new affordable variant of the iPad, 10.2-inch one, starting up in India up about 30,000 rupees. That's a new bet by Apple, really an affordable iPad version really. The Apple Watch 5 series has also been launched, all on display, also 18-hour battery life. That will really make life easy. Also, we have seen a lot more clarity come by for the video subscription platform Apple TV Plus and the gaming subscription model Apple Arcade, both of which will start at about 99 rupees per month. A host of new video shows that they would launch, clearly taking on Amazon Prime and Netflix with this new price offering. So yes, Apple has tried to bundle in a lot more this launch. But remember, for the 5G variant next year, we'll see a lot of the interesting models be doled out. Also, Apple has been moving beyond iPhones to really focus on sales from the software side. The new bet on video subscription, game subscription, we will have to see how it really pays off. For now, Apple lovers giving the launch a thumbs up now.
All right, but of course, we on the Money Show are all about the money bit, and yes, we do have the pricing. We have around 64,900 rupees. That's the cheapest version of the products. Apple's iPhone 11 essentially, and the cheapest variant starts from 64,900, and then of course it moves on to around 79,900 and roughly around 99,900 as well. The iPads as well have been released, not to mention the colors: purple, white, green, yellow, black and red. We also have the Apple TV. We have the iPad as well, that's starting at a pretty decent price of around 29,990. In fact, he called it the affordable iPad. This is really one of the cheapest iPads I have seen. The Apple Watch series, however, is a little expensive. It's almost 50,000 rupees, and I think there are several other kind of watches as well, smart watches that are available in the market. However, of course, this has that added benefit of having a great and almost seamless connectivity with your phone. So I think that's really great. The battery life, however, which has been a persistent problem, let's see if this time around Apple has been able to solve that. What's interesting, however, is that the existing products of Apple that are in the Indian markets currently, right from iPhone 7 to iPhone 10s and 10R, their pricing has dropped. iPhone 7's pricing have almost halved compared to their launch price, and when it comes to the iPhone 10 series, we have seen just a minor drop of around 10,000 rupees. For example, the iPhone 10R still charges around 90 odd grand, so it's just 10,000 odd rupees of a drop that we have seen from that whopping 1 lakh rupees that it had launched itself at. I would say this time around Apple has been a little more, you could say, prudent with their pricing. They've not been, it's not being targeted to only the prodigal customers out there. Remember, historically, Apple is an extremely expensive brand. All of its brands are always essentially, they do tend to be a little expensive. So this time around, let's see if it's actually worth your money. That's the question that we are going to be getting answered on Spend with TMS. And to take us through that, we have Navkender Singh, Associate Director of Devices and Ecosystem with IDC. Navkender, thank you so much for joining us on the Money Show. We essentially want to give our viewers a gist and a look into whether this product is actually worth the buck. So let's start off first with the iPhone 11, because that's one of the most popular products of Apple. Navkender, what do you like the most about it? How does it pitch against products in the same category, or essentially its peers basically? How does it essentially compare with that?
Yeah, thank you for giving me time on the show. So what I like about iPhone 11 is, one, as you said, the pricing is very aggressive from Apple this time around. And, we were a little surprised that the iPhone 11 has been launched at price lesser than the 10R launch price. So I think it shows, Apple's intent that it's being more prudent in bringing devices to the market at right kind of price points. So having said that, the pricing obviously will differ across countries. The triple camera setup and the pro photography kind of features are very exciting. We need to experience the device, at how they come up, because there are so many triple cameras in the market, but it's really about components and how it integrates with the operating system that's important, and I'm sure we can be confident that Apple has done a good job on that. Additionally, their in-house processor, the new version A13, it's possibly one of the most powerful processor on a smartphone. I think that's a very exciting thing, because it does machine learning and the GPU is much more powerful. So I think these are some of the few things which are really exciting about the new range this time around.
Yeah, like he mentioned, it's, I think, very competitively priced. However, Navkender, what is it that you feel Apple could have done, could have added, or perhaps what you're disappointed at not seeing? And I know foldable screens are still a couple of years away, though I would really want to see how that works out. But yeah, apart from that, of course, what do you think is missing at this time around compared to what the rumors, etc., were floating?
See, obviously the pricing could have been a lot better in a market like India. If they start, producing in India, you can have all the phones, nearer to 50,000, which is really the sweet point they've tasted. But having said that, I think iPhone 11's design is a little disappointment, in the sense that it's the same big forehead kind of notch, which might not excite many consumers, because at 65,000 for a market like India, it's still very expensive. And then if you don't want to buy that, you want to have a good design with triple camera and full screen, you really have to stretch much more. So I think I was a little disappointed to see the same kind of design. But otherwise, I think it's a very prudent and exciting lineup they've brought this time around for iPhones.
Especially for a market like India, could have been a little more competitive. I mean, on an average, we spend around 50 grand for our phone. The entire OnePlus series as well is roughly at around 50 odd grand rupees, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe on the pricing, there was still some scope to be a bit more competitive. But mind you, again, 64,900 compared to what they've historically been launching their phones at is still not that bad. I'm going to get a final review from you once, but I just want a quick word on the watch series. That's a little pricey, 50 grand. How would you review that?
See, I think in watch you have to see that Apple Watch appeals to people who are really invested in the Apple ecosystem. So they might have an iPad or a Mac or a MacBook or even iPhone. It really appeals to them. But having said that, Apple Watch is one of the only smartwatches in the market they are far ahead of any other competition in terms of health and safety and the fitness piece. I think they are comfortably year and a half away in terms of innovation, what they have done, and they showcased it yesterday as well. These are the real use cases. They've been able to do that. I don't think the pricing is a problem there, because if somebody wants to enter an Apple Watch ecosystem, the Watch 3 is at $199 now. I think in India it will land a little lesser than 20,000 rupees. It's still a good buy. But an Apple Watch 5 at even 45,000 rupees, it's not a bad buy. I think they're comfortably much ahead than the competition.
All right, my producer's asking me to wrap up, but quickly, Navkender, in your view, if someone's invested in the Apple ecosystem or not, maybe looking to make a change, is this worth a buy?
Oh, absolutely. It's worth a buy if somebody's invested in the ecosystem or is planning to buy any of the other devices. If you want to buy a smartwatch, Apple Watch is a watch to buy.
All right. Thanks so much, Navkender, for joining us and giving us your review of the Apple products launched yesterday evening in the United States. A whole host of the products, 64,900 is the starting price. And I hope we on the Spend Your TMS have able to help you make a prudent decision. With that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with a brand new episode.